Welcome back to Starkiller Base. Today we delve into the RRG once again to take a look at the changes that came into place from RRG version 1.5. The changes came into effect November 6, 2017. The first change we see comes under upgrades here. It now says a player may discard an upgrade already on a character to decrease the cost of a new upgrade being played on that character by the cost of the discarded one. This is called replacing an upgrade, and each player may only do this once per round. That was a significant change here, whereas before you could overwrite over and over again, and we saw decks like Rainbow Nines overwriting weapons 4, 5, 6, 7 times a turn. So now you can only replace an upgrade once a turn across your entire board. It also indicates that since you can only replace an upgrade once per turn, you can choose to discard an upgrade and play one out. So if I had 3 upgrades on my character, I could either overwrite one of them and reduce the cost by the one I overwrote, or let's say I had already overwritten a turn, I could discard my holdout blaster and then pay 2 to play out an upgrade on my character anyway, which allows me to change the dice or trigger FN's ability or whatnot without having to step on that once per round overwrite. This next change is a little one from out of play. It says a card leaves play when it transitions from the play area to an out of play area. Remove all tokens from that card. So this is probably something that's going to be working with upcoming cards like the Bomber from Legacies, where you put damage tokens on it, and then when it gets discarded, when it gets enough damage tokens on it, it gets discarded. So you would discard it, you would remove the damage tokens from it, and then if you, say, played it back with, you got Starship Graveyard or something like that to put it on top of your deck and then played it out again, it would have no damage tokens on it. Here under Play a Card from Hand, we have another once per round change, which is basically just saying that you can overwrite once per round. And then under Discard to reroll dice, it says a player can discard 1 card of their choice from their hand to reroll any number of dice in their pool. I'm pretty sure that this is what it said in the previous iteration of the RRG, but this change that happened here is that you can actually reroll 0 dice. This was mostly put into play to prevent people from locking you down with an infinite loop with running interference. So now you can just say, okay, I'm going to discard this card to reroll no dice. And it's actually kind of handy too when you're looking at a Sabine deck where you want to discard a weapon and reroll no dice, so that you can then use Sabine's ability to put it on her and roll her in. Or where you have the cards that if there's a second copy of it in the discard pile, then it gets an additional effect like Long Con or no disintegrations or anything like that. Then you can just discard to reroll no dice and then play it as your second action, so that works too. This one's an interesting change under damage here. It talks about how any excess damage taken by a character above its health is ignored, and then the biggest change or the biggest clarification here is talks about when people are dealing damage as they wish. The player assigns their characters the amount of damage that will be dealt, but a player cannot assign an amount of damage greater than the remaining health plus the number of shields on a character, unless a player cannot assign any more damage to their characters and there's still damage remaining to be assigned. Then the player must assign their damage to characters as they choose. And then it proceeds to say once all damage is assigned, it is dealt simultaneously. So something that came up in a game yesterday actually was my buddy sitting next to me was asking, he was playing against Palpatine, and he had a Magna Guard, and the Magna Guard was at 8 damage already, and the Palpatine player did 2 range damage into Kylo Ren, I think it was. And the question was, can you assign the 2 damage from Palpatine's ability to the Magna Guard? And the answer is no, because the Magna Guard is already at full health, or full damage I should say, so you cannot assign any damage more than they have in health. I mean, it would be great if you could, because the Magna Guard's not dying till the end of the round regardless, and you could just soak up all that extra damage, but unfortunately that's not quite how it works. The next change here is under Q. We have another example. It says, a player plays the event Squad Tactics and has a Gamorrean Guard with a Gaffy Stick and a Tusken Raider on their team. The Guard has the Guardian keyword, and since this is a before ability, it interrupts the activation and resolves, i.e. it does not enter the queue. The Guard is defeated by the damage it takes with Guardian, and the redeploy keyword on the Gaffy Stick interrupts it being defeated and moves it to the Raider. It does not enter the queue. Squad Tactics then activates the Raider, and it rolls both its die and the Gaffy Stick into the pool. The after ability on the Raider triggers and enters the queue, and since nothing else is in the queue, it resolves. So there was a previous example here, and I believe it said the opposite, that the character would squad tactics would fully resolve before any of that stuff happened. So this is clarified, and it makes a lot more sense this way. I didn't agree with the ruling the last time, so this is good, I suppose. Okay, so let's say we have this situation here. I play squad tactics here. I get to activate any number of my non-unique characters. So I'm going to use the Gamorrean Guard. I will Guardian this die here, which kills the Gamorrean Guard. Because Guardian is a before ability. Before abilities don't enter the queue, they interrupt it. Redeploy is also a before ability, so this would happen. So it sort of paused the resolution of squad tactics for this stuff to happen, and now squad tactics will complete. The Tusken Raider rolls in, like so, and then that's how that goes. Under inherent dice abilities, there's just a few dice that are added that have non-special inherent dice, like the Seeker Droid and the Training Remote. And the reason why the queue works the way that it did in the previous example is because of the change to Redeploy. Redeploy now says before this upgrade would be discarded by its character being defeated, you may instead move it to one of your other characters. If it was not a before ability, then the example in the queue would not have worked the way that it did, because Redeploy would not have interrupted the resolution of squad tactics. So the next change here is under Controller. It clarifies and says when an ability refers to your card or die, it is referring to a card or die under your control. This is probably going to be relevant with cards like General Grievous, where you take control of an opponent's weapon when a character dies, or something in the design space in the future as well. Also under Move, it says here when an upgrade moves to a new character, it maintains its state ready or exhausted. So we know that things like Makashi Training and Personal Shield both have an ability on them that requires you to exhaust the upgrade in order to trigger it, which prevents you from doing it twice per round. So let's say, for example, I have Personal Shield out on a character, and I use it to gain the shield when you do some range damage to me. I claim the battlefield and cargo hold it over to another character. It goes exhausted still, so I could not use that ability again. Obviously, this will be more relevant if there are redeploy weapons or item upgrades that have an ability that requires you to exhaust the upgrade to do it, but we haven't seen those yet. So one of the biggest changes in the RRG that we've seen is the balance of the Force, and this is a section of characters that have had their points balanced out to make the game more fair or make them more in line with what the character should cost. So Captain Phasma was increased by 1 point. She's now 10-14, so you can't pair up with Cad Bane and two-player Kylo and that sort of stuff, which is kind of unfortunate when you're playing a two-player box set, but I guess if you had just picked up your two-player box, you probably wouldn't be digging into the RRG to look for balancing. FN 2199 has gained 2 points. He's now 12-15, so gone are the days of Rainbow Nines and Funkar. And of course, he is hit pretty badly when it comes to the whole overriding once per turn. I was actually thinking that before the changes were made, that Funkar wouldn't be too bad if they made it so you could only overwrite once per turn, because you're running a deck that had enough money that he could just play out multiple upgrades. Obviously does hurt it, and you can see further down that Unkar's points are increased as well, so that deck is gone. I rather enjoyed it while I was here, though. Poe Dameron has gained 2 points as well. He's now a 16-20, so you can technically still run Poe Maz, but it would be a single die Maz with Elite Poe. I haven't seen anybody try that yet. I suppose it would be alright, but eh. And lastly, we see Unkar getting plus 2 points. He's now a 12-15 instead of a 10-13. That's a big deal. I'm not sure that Unkar actually needed any balancing, personally. I suppose when you could run him with Sienna Rhee and a TIE Pilot, or you used to be able to run him with Captain Phasma, and it made for a pretty nasty deck. I didn't see it winning any tournaments, but it was a lot of fun. But there you go. So these points may be changed in the future. They might be rebalanced back down to what they were before, or increased even further, or who knows. So we'll see how it goes. So we're really getting into the meat of it now here with these erratas. So we see it's a trap here. It says it no longer has ambush and should read choose a symbol showing on an opponent's die, then turn up to 2 of your red dice to sides showing that symbol. I'm not sure that this was really necessary, personally. I've taken it out of all my decks because the lack of ambush isn't that big a deal, but combining that with the 2 red dice is really unfortunate. It completely guts the card. I mean, it was always dangerous to have that card in the pool simply because of the fact that you need to watch how you balance red characters and red dice from that point on, because its trap could always become completely out of control. But I think they may have gone a little bit too far to nerf it, as they say, but who knows. The next errata we have here is for Imperial Inspection. It says it should read, after one of your dice rolls a disrupt, you may set the support aside to return an upgrade in play that costs 2 or less to its owner's hand. So I guess FFG's finally realized that Imperial Inspection is horribly oppressive and has decided to make it a one-time use. I'm not sure that you necessarily needed to do the set aside the support thing, because I don't think it would be all that bad if you had to use Starship Graveyard or Docking Bay or something like that to return it to play. It's enough of a hassle that you probably wouldn't do it, but who knows, maybe they just wanted to make sure that it was no longer going to be played, and I think that definitely did that. Another one here is Vibro Knife, which is a big deal. It says it should read ambush. Damage dealt by this die or dice it modifies is unblockable. So that's a big change, and I'm actually very happy over this one. I think it's brought a lot of balance to the game. So essentially with Vibro Knife, if it's showing a 1 melee, then the 1 melee is unblockable. If it's a +2 melee, then any die that you modify with that +2 becomes unblockable as well. Whereas before it was ridiculous. It could be a blank, it could be a discard on the Vibro Knife, and every melee die in your pool was unblockable. So, you know, this is much better. At most, you're going to get maybe 5 unblockable damage typically. I suppose if you had a, you know, something like a Vader die with a +2 on the Vibro Knife and then a +3 from something else, then you could do some serious unblockable. But, you know, obviously that's a bit of an edge case, and you can mitigate the Vader die, and then everything else just falls apart. So I'm very happy with this change. Next we have Heat of Battle. It says it should read, choose an opponent. That opponent turns up to 2 of their dice to sides showing damage, ranged or melee. Turn up to 2 of your dice to sides showing damage. So that one is, I've seen some pretty huge blowouts from Heat of Battle, like after an opponent has claimed or against a mill deck or something like that, where Heat of Battle can do some ridiculous stuff, especially when you use it with running interference and say that your opponent can't play a card, because then all that's left is they can resolve any of their dice if they happen to have dice that they turn into damage, but you can do some crazy stuff with that one. 2 is not bad, I suppose. I guess it's a similar vein to, it's a trap, but Heat of Battle is a lot less restricted because it didn't have to have, you know, your opponent's die showing a particular symbol. It didn't have to be red dice or anything like that. So I definitely welcome this change. So there's an errata to the card Destiny. It says, before effects that decrease the cost of a card cannot be used in combination with Destiny to play a card with a higher value. So that would go for things like It Binds All Things, or I guess Tech Team if you were getting all saucy. So let's look at an example on TTS. You used to be able to say, okay, I'm going to play Destiny, and then I'm going to use this and remove this 2 to reduce the cost of the thing by 4, and then play Master of the Council for free. However, now you can't do that. So Master of the Council is completely off the table. You can't be an extra for it or anything like that. You just have to figure out a way to play a different upgrade out. A Shota Lightsaber would work, or if you know, obviously if you have Mace's 4 for 1, you can still do it. So I'm not sure that the change was necessary, but I guess it makes the game simpler. Under Premonitions, it says, if there is a play restriction that prevents the card from being played, discard it to its owner's discard pile. So that's just a bit of a catch-all, just in case something happens, like you can't spot a blue character or whatever happens to be the case. So there's a lot of clarifications from Empire at War here. The first is Ahsoka Tano. Her ability is, after you roll her in, you can pay 1 resource for each die she just rolled in to ready her. And of course, this just clarifies that you have to pay for the dice from upgrades on her as well. That makes upgrades like Fearless, which don't have dice that have an ability, much better for Ahsoka than a card that actually does come with a die. Next, we have Ancient Lightsaber. It says, when this upgrades action is used, place it on the bottom of its owner's deck. So if General Grievous stole an Ancient Lightsaber from somebody, which would be hard to do since your opponent could just use the ability first, but let's say that he did. When you use Ancient Lightsaber to heal Grievous, it goes on the bottom of the owner's deck, not the Grievous player's deck. Next we have Coercion. It says, if the player cannot pay for the event, or fulfill any play restrictions on it, then they do not have to play it and can take any action they wish. Even if the event has no effect, a player must play it and resolve as much of it as possible, provided they fulfill any play restrictions listed on the card. And passing is not an action, so a player can choose to pass their turn instead of taking an action. The next time they would take an action that round, they must still play the chosen event if able. So coercion seemed really cool. It's got clarified into the ground. I'm not going to say it got nerfed, because I guess it was intended to be played this way the whole time. And now it's not nearly as good, but at least it was fun while it lasted. Next we have General Hux. It says the special ability counts each character you have in play, not any of your defeated characters. Okay, that makes sense. The Grand Inquisitor's Lightsaber. When resolving this special, you can reroll it instead of removing it from your pool, even if you did not turn a character die to a blank. Under Hut Ties here, it says either option can be chosen, even if a player does not have any resources or dice. This is similar to things like Abandon All Hope and Let the Wookiee Win. So the ID9 Seeker Droid has clarified that the ability on the die is an inherent die ability. This is relevant in situations where, let's say, I guess you were playing a Seventh Sister mirror match, and I used It Will All Be Mine to resolve one of your Seeker Droid dice as if it were mine. It would still have its ability because it's an inherent die ability, and it would increase it by the number of ID9 Seeker Droids I had in my pool, not yours obviously, but still that would work. The value of this die is constantly checked and will decrease whenever another ID9 Seeker Droid die leaves your pool. So let's look at a quick example here on TTS. Let's say that the Seventh Sister rolled in her 2 Seeker Droid dice and the third one from her ability and hit a melee, a melee, and a melee. What it's essentially saying is that when I say I'm going to resolve melee damage, this first one will resolve for 3. And now it's been removed from the pool because it's been resolved. Now there are only 2 dice left, so this one would hit for 2. And then again, this one would then hit for 1. Next we have Kanan Jarrus. It says you must declare what action you're taking before using Kanan's ability. So you would say something like, I'm resolving melee damage, and then before I do, I'll use Kanan's ability to use his focus die to focus something to some more melee damage, and then smack you for 5. Next, Mace Windu says shields do not affect remaining health. This is relevant for his ability, so if you have 2 health left and 3 shields, you can still remove Mace's die to defeat that character. Magna Guard says even if this character is healed after its ability triggered, it will still be defeated at the end of the round. So that is relevant because the defeated state is triggered regardless of whether or not the character is then at 6 health left or something like that. It says you can still deal damage to this character once it has 8 damage on it, just any excess damage over that is ignored. So where you could play the best defense to put 3 more damage on it and remove some dice, that works. But if you are dealing damage as you wish, you cannot assign any more damage to it than the 8 that it has as a maximum. Next we have Port District. It says if you decrease the cost of the upgrade being played below 3 or play it for free, then it does not gain ambush. Okay, I haven't seen any decks playing Port District, but that is definitely an important distinction. So if you had Port District with a bunch of 3 cost blue upgrades and had it binds all things, if you binds all things to reduce the cost to 2, then it doesn't get ambush. And then for running interference, it says after taking an action, using 2 copies of this support on the same opponent will only prevent them from taking that action on their next turn that round, not their next 2 turns. I didn't think that this was a particularly important clarification. I didn't see anybody asking this, but I guess it's good to know. So it looks like that's the end of our exploration of RRG 1.5. The changes are rather drastic, but I think that they have brought the Destiny meta into one of the best places it's been ever. So I'm very happy with these changes. There are so many decks that are at the top tables in tournaments, and so many more decks that are fun to play and not completely oppressed by decks that used to exist. I'm hoping that the FFG and Jeremy Zwirn will continue to keep changes like this coming so the Destiny stays a healthy and fun game for the future. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time on Starkiller Base.